Okay, can everybody hear me? I'm having trouble with my computer today.
You're loud and clear.
No problem.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and I may blank out. I don't know what's going on. We need to have an amendment to the minutes. Would staff like to tell us about that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the February 23rd minutes just had a couple minor revisions to them, which we provided to the committee just shortly ago via email. We'd like to propose that the minutes be adopted as amended on page 3 to more accurately reflect the comments by Lauren Sly and Linda Barnes.
Okay, would someone like to move adoption? All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Next committee meeting, April 27th. An amendment to the delegations. First, we have Mike Bomford from the Kwantlen. Second, a delegation from Britannia Shipyard. And I'll also put Alexa Liu down so she can make her presentation and doesn't have to stay for the whole meeting. So she'd be a delegation under a delegation number 3, if that's okay. So I'd like to invite Mike Bomford to join us.
Hello. Hello.
Mike, are you there?
I am here. Yes. Do you hear me?
I don't see you.
Uh-oh. I can see myself.
Now we can see you. Oh, there you go. Very distinguished, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and proceed.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity to present to you today, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work at the Garden City Lands. This has been just a wonderful location for our students to learn to farm and for them to conduct research. I'm going to share my screen, and I'll share just a few of the images that were in the report that are also in your agenda package, and I hope that those will trigger some thoughts and any questions, and I'd certainly be happy to answer questions. So I'm hoping that you see a slide that says KPU Farm at the Garden City Lands. Let me know if that's not coming through. Fine.
Looks good, Mike.
Wonderful. Okay. And now I hope you see an image of the farm taken by Ruth Fung, our neighbor across the street. She lives in a 12-story condominium, and she does a wonderful job of documenting our progress. We really appreciate her photo documentation. Now, we are leasing 20 acres of the Garden City Lands that show up in this is the northwest corner of the property. So you'll see on the left, Garden City Road. At the top is Alderbridge Way, and on the right is Number 4 Road. The eastern portion of the site is dedicated to bog restoration and conservation. And the KPU lease covers, 20 acres in the northwest corner. About 8 acres of that is in active agricultural production right now, and the most intensive production is in that section near the center left, labeled horticultural cash crops. If we zoom in on that area, you'll see near the top of this image are sliding high tunnels. So these are protected solar heated structures that can move between 3 different locations in order to enable crop rotation. A distinctive feature is the solar dome greenhouse where we produce our transplants, and you'll note that in the bottom left. We have our market garden plots, which are each dedicated to a different crop family, and we rotate crop families through those plots on a 6-year rotation, and you'll see the 6 market garden beds around the bottom of this slide. And then as we move east, you'll notice perennial planting of alfalfa, and then corn, cabbage, squash, potatoes. These are field crops that take a little more space. A lot of the eastern portion, we call it the East Field, is dedicated to soil building cover crops, and we'll be planting an orchard this year in the far east. And as our production system expands, we will occupy and be actively producing cash crops on that entire area. And we'll also be moving north of the road there into to bring new areas into production. The entire section is ringed by a beetle banks, and beetle banks also cut through the property. The idea here is to establish perennial habitat, shrubs and grasses, in a raised area that isn't disturbed in order to provide habitat for beneficial insects like ground beetles and also pollinators. There are a lot of flowering plants in those zones. And we have now at the site bees, honeybees in the beetle banks. Now, 2020 was a challenging year for us, as it was for everybody, I think. We were initially told that we weren't allowed to have students at the site. The university made that decision early on. We were able to get a compromise, I suppose. If we were hired, anybody that we hired was allowed to come to the site. So we were able to hire a bunch of our students as employees and operate the farm and run the market. We weren't sure if the farmers market was going to operate, but in fact, we got permission to go forward at the lacrosse court across from City Hall. And you'll see in the image along the bottom that farmers market, which was very popular. It was a wonderful market this year, but there were all sorts of efforts to enable social distancing, enable wide spacing, and there were long lineups as people had to stay far apart from each other, and we weren't allowed to have more than 50 people on the site. Because a lot of our students weren't allowed at the site, we couldn't have a graduation ceremony, and so we had to record video messages for our graduating students, which was tough, honestly. We really appreciate the student contact. Fortunately, I think, our students are now allowed back at the farm. We've been running classes since October, and I'm actively working with a group of students now. This morning we were in the dome seeding and in the high tunnels planting. The tunnels are almost entirely planted, and I'm really looking forward to the year ahead. So 2020 was a good year at the farm. Our marketable harvest exceeded 15 metric tons. Our market sales at the farmers market were in excess of $33,000. Wow. Intended to sell a lot more through KPU Food Services into the cafeterias on campus. And of course, all the cafeterias ended up shutting down. So we had a lot of crops that didn't have customers, and we ended up donating a lot to the Richmond Food Bank, in excess of $43,000 worth of produce. So I think the total value is more than $76,000. And our top sellers this year were salad mix, carrots, potatoes, lettuce, beets, spinach, squash, eggplant, kale, and zucchini. Those are the top 10 of about 33 different crops that we grew. We've made a number of infrastructure investments in 2020 and in some of the time before that. So we really appreciate the city's help with establishing drainage, and then we've added an irrigation system so that we can separate the land into different zones and automatically control our irrigation from afar. Of course, the solar dome greenhouse has been eye-catching, and it's also just been a really wonderful piece of infrastructure for producing transplants, and it allows us to move forward with early season production with burning fossil fuel heat, which is unusual in the world of greenhouses. We have these movable high tunnels. Currently, each of them can be in 2 positions, and this spring we'll be laying more track to add a 3rd position for each of those tunnels. And if you look along the bottom of the slide here, you'll see the tunnels shifting position in different times of year, so we can move from cool season production to warm season production, for example, depending on the season. A new produce washing station has been really helpful, so we have 6 stainless steel sinks. As produce comes out of the field, it can be washed and then put into a refrigerated trailer, and then we bring the refrigerated trailer to market. We actually write our price lists on the edge of the trailer, and we can unload the trailer onto the market stand. So this has been a very useful piece of infrastructure. we have been really making efforts to reach out to the public and to interact with the public. It's been tough because we've had to limit personal contact. In the report, I list some of the events that we were able to host before the pandemic began, and some of the efforts we've been able to make through video and other outreach activities. I'll mention just the week before last, Friday before last, we hosted the Premier and all three of the Richmond MLAs visited the farm virtually and were able to, through my iPad, come into the dome and tour the high tunnels and have a look at what was happening at that site. So I'm hoping that those who have had an opportunity to read my report have questions, and that the images that I've shared from the report will trigger your memories, and I'll stop talking now and answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody from committee have any questions?
Yes, Councillor Wolf.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Great, thanks.
Somehow my screen has changed.
Oh. Yeah, I'll thank you through the chair to Mike. Great presentation. Thanks for the report. Really excited to be able to showcase this to the world, and I'm sure you're doing well using technology and getting people virtually there. So that's great to hear accomplishments. My question originally was about the promoting biodiversity section. For us, it's page 20. It's the section under birds, and I think you mentioned there in the presentation beetle banks, and is that a coined term? Is that a concept that a student or yourself is attributed to doing? And then the second part to that is just north of the Garden City lands, there's a successful site where barn owls are using a nest box, and maybe you're already aware of that, and maybe there's a similar strategy design you could use on the Garden City lands, or are you already doing that on the Kwantlen section? So those were my two questions. Thanks.
Thank you for the questions. Can I just address them directly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks very much, Michael. So beetle banks this is not my term. It's not a term from one of my students. If you run a search for beetle banks, you'll find the term used for many years and in many different locations. And there's actually really good research on the efficacy of beetle banks in terms of promoting beneficial insect populations. Really, an annual cropping system in which the soil is disturbed can be disruptive to an ecosystem, and so incorporating perennial zones into that cropping system really helps a number of different organisms, and those beneficial ground beetles are particularly vulnerable to cultivation and really need raised areas of perennial habitat, particularly with grasses that provides nice habitat for ground beetles. We want the ground beetles there because, of course, they're foraging and eating eggs of other insects and some of the soft-bodied pest insects like aphids and spider mites and things like that. They'll move up into the plants at night. So they're really a nice thing to have around, and generally a good indicator of a balanced ecosystem on a farm. So I wish it were my idea, but it's not. There's lots of research on beetle banks. The question about the barn owl houses, yeah, we are really pleased to see the barn owl houses there. We really appreciate the presence of the owls and the other predatory birds that we frequently see at the site. We don't have owl boxes on the agricultural land at present. I would welcome any owl boxes, but it seems like the agricultural land is ringed by boxes. There are barn owl boxes, 2 of them to the east of the agricultural land and 1 to the north of the agricultural land. And then this year we also have swallow houses recently established all around that land. And again, this is just a wonderful predator to add to that agro ecosystem. We're really, really happy to have that. We're looking for opportunities to promote some of those beneficial organisms that are on our side when we're trying to deal with some pests.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And just through the chair, just to follow up, and I'm sure staff heard there, of the success of the beetle banks, and maybe we can look into seeing how that could be utilized on other properties, city properties that are not leased to Kwantlen if it's a successful strategy on the Garden City lands. That would be great. So thanks for sharing all that.
Okay, Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the delegation. Well, thank you very much for coming today, and what a great report. And it's such a good news story, and I think, in times like we're in, we need really good news stories. So I know I walk around the Garden City lands, a couple times a month, and there's always lots of people, and we always get lots of questions about the dome. So, I think people are really curious about what's going on there. And I do go to the farmers market, and there's always a lineup at your table, so the produce must be really good. But as to this being such a good news story, are you sharing this report? And I'm going to put it out to our staff, too. Is there a way we can share this? Because, this really is good news. And it goes, a lot of people ask what's going on out there. And I think this is just a really great opportunity to share this story.
Yes, I agree. I think it is a good news story and one that ought to be shared. I'm happy to see the report shared. I was contacted by a reporter from the Richmond Sentinel recently, and I did share the report with her. And I'd be, very willing to, I'm happy to see anybody distribute it, and I want to spread it around as well. We try to spread this within the university community. If you know of outlets that you think would like the report, feel free to forward it yourself or let me know and I'll forward it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else on my screen. Does anybody else wanted to comment? Doesn't look like it. Anyway, my comments, Mike, thanks very much for coming, and thanks for your annual report. It's wonderful, and it's great to see the farm progressing, and speaking for all of council, we're looking forward to an even bigger and better report next year. And of course, you're aware we've got an item on the agenda today dealing with allotment gardens, and we will be making further plans for the Garden City lands in the future. I think this is one of Richmond's flagships of developments in terms of parks and recreation, and we're certainly glad to have you and Kwantlen as part of it. So thanks for coming. Any further comments you want to make?
No further comments. Thank you very much for inviting me. I want to let you know my door is open. Of course, it has to be virtual at the moment, but please contact me if you have questions, and I'm always happy to around, particularly as things open up, as the pandemic eases. I'm really looking forward to showing people the site.
Great, thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item, item 2, is a delegation from Britannia Shipyard National Historic Site Society. If they could come online now, it's headed by the chair of the committee, Andy Hobbs, and I think 3 other people are coming with them as a delegation. There's Terry McPhail. Where's everybody else?
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. You caught me by surprise there.
Oh, okay, if you could introduce yourself and your delegation.
All right, thank you. Through the chair, on behalf of the Britannia Shipyard Society, I'm Andy Hobbs, I'm the chair, and just want to thank you for the opportunity of speaking to the committee today. We're here to draw your attention to our proposal. It's a draft, which you have before you today, that the Society operate the Britannia and Imperial docks. In a moment, we'll briefly discuss what the future of dock operations could potentially resemble. With me today are Randall Olofsson, Terry McPhail, and Lauren Sly. And just briefly, Randall is a society member and has a wealth of experience relating to boats and marinas and docks and classic boats. Among his other qualifications, he is the past Commodore of the Classic Yachting Association of the United States of America. Currently, he's the Vice Commodore of the Classic Yachting Association of Canada. We're happy to have Randall on board, so to speak, to provide his experience and expertise with this project. Also, Terry McPhail, the Vice Chair of our Society and the President of Shelter Island Marina, is with us today. He's also a Society member. Terry has a tremendous amount of experience and expertise in boat yards and marinas, docks, boats, and he also has a long history in Richmond as well. Our fourth member is Lauren Sly. I'm sure none of you are familiar with Lauren, but he's the past chair of our society and, as you know, has a long history in Steveston, and in particular with the culture and maritime history of the Britannia site. The report you have before you from our society, as I mentioned, is a draft, and we've had some information provided by staff to assist us in preparing that draft. Although staff haven't had the chance to thoroughly review it, the final report will be completed and submitted for your consideration in the near future. The concept to assume management and operation of Britannia and Imperial docks is really an evolution of the docks, and we intend that it will achieve several outcomes. Not necessarily including everything, but just briefly, one would be the sustainability of the docks and a certain amount of revenue for both the site and the society, with all revenue going back to the site through our mutual agreement with the city. There would be greater animation of the docks and the site in general through the increased presence of the appropriate type of boats. There'd be increased public interest and tourism due to the heritage/working boats that would be present at the site and that would generate interest. There would be benefit to local businesses through the resupply of boats and through general retail. The report before you, as I mentioned, is a draft, and we intend to provide a final report for Council's consideration. With the Chair's permission, Randall has some additional comments, followed by Lauren. Thank you very much.
Yep, go ahead.
I just get myself unmuted. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yep, you're coming through.
Great. Okay, so I was asked to speak briefly over my involvement with a few different things here. So I'm just going to read a statement that we put together in supporting the incentives that the Society wants to move forward with. So I'll just go ahead and read it, if that's fine. So I'm submitting this missive in support of the Society's initiative to now take over the management of the dock and the Imperial landing docks. This would appear to be an appropriate time to evaluate and highlight the opportunities available at these unique locations. It may also be an appropriate time to encourage City Council members, along with the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Committee, to review the benefits that good governance and management of the existing dock assets in Steveston Village would bring. I believe that the fundamental values that the Society has been part of, and my family included, for many years, was involved with many marine-related activities for over 50 years. My heritage is Icelandic, and my grandfather fished on the waters from Steveston to Prince Rupert for years and years. I've been a member of the Royal Vancouver Yacht Club and served 9 out of the last 45 years as an executive member. I've been on very many boards, both public and private, and I've been appointed over the years and served my corporate and civic duties in a civil and appropriate manner. I've had the privilege to become the first Canadian Commodore of the Classic Yachting Association in the United States, and I'm currently the Vice Commodore. I'm also the Canadian chapter of the Classic Yacht Association's advocate. And prior to the pandemic, we had a number of our members attend the Maritime Festival in Steveston. The volunteers at the Society work with the Maritime Festival organizers to make sure that we had a great turnout of CYA members on the docks to support the Society during the event. The CYA has many functions throughout the Pacific Northwest, and I look forward to engaging all of our fleet executives to support further activities in the Steveston area. The Society and many other organizations that have a kindred spirit and enthusiasm to campaign for the continued use are invaluable. The constant promotion and appreciation for Steveston Harbor-related marine antiquities are becoming scarce these days. Support for the Imperial landing docks to operate in tandem. The Society would be able to provide additional visitor experiences at Britannia shipyards, and the promotion and management of the Imperial landing dock, we believe, can significantly improve transient and visitor moorage use. This would also be a marked improvement to pedestrian traffic, businesses, stores, shops, restaurants, and service providers in the Steveston area. Over the past 15 years, there has been an increase in activity in the vessels that now transit Steveston on their way to the Gulf Islands, Vancouver, and other destinations further to the north. The opportunity to bring together these resources to our village of Steveston should now be acted upon. I believe that the following observations are accurate today, and I support these initiatives. The Society at the docks at the Britannia shipyards are underutilized and should become the future home dock for historical and significant events. Providing new docks and more emphasis on promotion for the Society and the Steveston area and Harborside would be an immediate impact on public interest and knowledge of the area. Priority with relevance to the marine working industry and its heritage would be an enthusiastic to participate with the Society at future maritime festivals. Vessel owners and local businesses would also become more involved with the Society and further advancement of the local events and programs as well. Providing superior moorage for boats of all kinds will attract tourist dollars into this area and allow them to engage with working vessels on a more interactive format. Over the past few years, there's been an increase in and around the waterways into Richmond, and I believe that this phenomenon is going to be a large degree created by the pandemic. Nonetheless, there has been an increase of activities that have revitalized Richmond and the waterways in many ways. As people continue to seek new experiences, there will be a rebirth and a new group of individuals anxious to learn more and understand the history of what Steveston has in the waterfront to share. Yours truly, Randall Olofsson.
Thank you. Okay, and Lawrence Fine next, and then we'll have questions. Unless Terry wants to speak. Are you there?
I just unmuted myself. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to give a real brief history about the board. Under Andy's chairmanship, we've gone from a board of 15, an unmanageable board of 15, down to 7. Andy is our current chair. I think you all know Andy, so I'm not going to go too much about Andy's past or his longevity here in Richmond. Terry McPhail, you also know, but some of you may not be aware that Terry is the owner of the BC's largest privately owned boatyard and marina. Our treasurer is Rob Heyman. Rob Heyman is an accountant, retired accountant, and the current chair of the Royal Canadian Marine Rescue Society here in Steveston Branch, which Andy and myself are also members of. Our secretary is a retired civil engineer who worked for 35 years with the City of Vancouver, Phil Carlson, and he was also ended his career as a superintendent of waterworks for City of Vancouver. David Chin is a board member who is also a major player that has brought the Dragon Boat Festival to Steeson, has been working on dragon boats for over 20 years. Carl Hebert is also on our board, and he is a successful businessman. Some of you may know Carl. He's also been involved in many committees throughout the city and here in Steeson, and is a valued player in our society. I'm the immediate past chair of the society. What we're doing is we're putting new members like Randall, who you just heard, on a committee for a year or two before they look at the possibility of joining our board for turnover. We also have a new society member who is working on this committee with us, is Carmen Keach. She is a longtime Steesonite, has fished the coast for 32 years as a fisher here in Steeson. She's from Mexico, and she's an accomplished artist, and she's also a recognized certified Aztec dancer. So we're bringing in some of the arts in our community, our board as well. So that's a brief history of our board and our working of our board, and I look forward to your approval, hopefully, on this process. Thank you.
Okay, did Terry want to speak, or are you just going to, he's been introduced?
Well, Terry's there if you have questions.
Yeah, okay, does anyone have any questions? Let's start with that. And I have troubles with the screen because it doesn't show everybody. Okay, I do have staff, Harold. Pardon? I do have staff. Okay, Bill, what, yeah.
No, I don't have of the delegation, but I do have staff. I have questions of staff on this one.
Question of staff. Okay, yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, I guess my question of staff, I read the recommendation, and if we considered all aspects of opportunities on the with regard to particular moorage at the Imperial Landing? I mean, the recommendation, reason I'm looking at the recommendation puts everything on hold, and my question is, have we considered all options, including the delegation? Or have we had a time to do it?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I'm assuming you're talking to speaking to Parks Afloat. At the end of the day, our recommendation is based on where we are today and the research that we have done to date. And for the most part, it's really geared around operational maintenance, programming, and dredging is the big one that is an outstanding issue on all improvements throughout the area. And that is the main reason why we are coming forward with the recommendation that we have of not proceeding at this time.
I guess my question, Your Worship, I'd like to make a referral after that refer this back to staff to consider all options with regard to the site and the request of the delegation, and not limited. I think we need to continue to do proactive work in this area. So when that time comes, I'd like to make that as a referral motion to staff.
Okay, Bill, I guess you didn't see the memo I sent you. I had prepared a referral just on this one because we're doing the two issues. And what my referral is, what my referral is similar to yours.
Okay.
Move that staff negotiate. Yeah, well, we can do that. But let me read me what I've got.
Thank you.
That staff negotiate an agreement for the Britannia Shipyard National Historic Society to take on the moorage management of both the Britannia Shipyard docks and Imperial Landing Dock for a trial period with possible extensions based on municipal benefits, and to report back with a second draft that would go to council. And that would just deal with just the Imperial float and Britannia float, which are operative right now. Everything else would be under the possible extensions in the future, which then would not conflict with the report that's coming up later on Parks and Float. And I think you were going to make us...
So basically, we're saying the same thing, but rather than negotiate, I'd like to look at the options first, report back to committee, and then negotiate. I don't know what options there are. Are there others?
Okay, the reason I suggested that we negotiate now is that we've referred this something like a dozen times over the past 20 years. And it's never come back. And I'm really reluctant to refer anything anymore.
Well,
you never get
maybe
it back.
we can put not a moratorium, but a timeline of within the month.
Okay, if we can do that, I'm prepared to refer it. But if not, if it can't come back in a month, then forget it. We'll simply move a motion because, as I said, everybody, a memo of how many times this was referred. The city of Richmond was running moorage on Britannia docks in 2001, 2002 until Mary Gazettas retired. And after that, the person that took over wasn't interested. We had a heritage vessel that was incredible that he booted off the dock. They were paying rent. It was a fishing boat run by a steam engine. I said, oh, we never had steam engines in fishing boats, which was not true. It was one of 5 boats that were boats that were run on steam for 100 years. It was the only one left, and he booted them off the dock. And so I've been trying to get this moorage going ever since. So it's 20 years that we've been referring this back and back and back and never getting a solution to it. The Britannia place is coming back with a solution because staff in the past is not prepared to do anything about it. So
I'm with you 100%, but I'd like to get some action on it too. But I just want to make sure we cover all our bases on it. And if it means 30 days, then we can ask for a report in the next day and say, what have you done?
I would second that. Then I've given my comment on it as what we're referring, and we need a comment back at the next part.
And other options as well as Harold.
And other options, yeah.
And through the chair, may I just clarify by other options, the consideration is for options for operations of the 2 docks. Yes. Operators or options for operations. Yeah, thank you.
Now how it should be done.
Thank you.
And the position of the city in those operations.
Okay, so we've got a referral motion for 1 month to come back. Is any other comments from committee? Okay, call the question. All those in favor?
Linda's got one. Sorry, Harold. Oh. Linda's got one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Linda.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will support the referral, and I think that this really goes to your point of the number of referrals that have been made. I know I made one, and you've included it on our list, February 26th of 2019. You know, I think that we really need to understand, does the city want to be running docks? I don't think it's our core business, and I think that we can see, that there have been boats coming there, and I don't think they're probably having the impact or we're getting the impact out of what we could be getting from them. I know that there was a story about Imperial landing in BC boating last year, and as has been mentioned, there's a lot more local boats out now, and I think there's a real opportunity. But as I said, I don't think it's our core business to do this, so I think having Britannia Heritage Shipyards take it over would be good. There's also issues down there that I think need to be looked at. The fishermen, I know that's a bone of contention with me, and I'm all for people getting outside and going out, but have you looked in the buckets of what they're catching? The DFO doesn't want to look at it. Kayakers, I had a group of kayakers emailing me. They're upset there's no place to dock. The fishermen won't get out of the way. And so, I think there's some issues that need to be handled, and I think that there's a good opportunity for a nonprofit organization to look at them and run them and work in partnership with us. So thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Steve, Carol Day.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about this referral. Will this include options for any revenue that's brought in from potentially managing the docks? It can be quite profitable. And
yes.
Would that money go back to the city or go back to Britannia?
All money would go back to the site.
Okay.
So that's why we need to look at options to see.
Okay.
We need a report back.
Okay, so the money goes back to the site, and so when it comes back in 30 days, have examples of how that potential profit could be used, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments?
Great. Good stuff.
Okay, you've heard the referral. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay, thank you. We'll see you in a month.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item 3 is I put Alexa in the beginning of the meeting because so she wouldn't have to wait all day to get to make her referral. So, Alexa, would you like to join us and tell us what, as the mayor says, what's in your mind?
Thanks, through the chair. I have a referral for staff to implement traffic calming on Fundy Drive, such as a stop sign at the entrance to the path just east of Pugwash and installation of a stop sign at Pugwash, and work with the neighborhood to implement further traffic calming measures on Fundy Drive adjacent to the park.
I would second that, Your Worship.
Second.
And if I could just speak quickly to it. Some of us, Councillor McPhail and Councillor McNulty and I met with some of the neighborhood people there. They've created a petition. They've talked to the PAC and the school is supportive of it, and so they'd like to move forward with it. So we'll also be looping, I've also forwarded this on to the school board liaison committee, and just to make sure that everybody's on board with the possible improvements that are happening. But seeing as it's right next to a park and we wanted to make sure that we've got good, safe access to our parks, I think that this is worth having staff work on it right away. And I know that they're already working forward with a number of putting in stop signs in various places that are appropriate. And so I think this is just continues on with that work and maybe moves that along right next to the park, if it's possible.
Okay, any discussion?
I think Linda and Carol have questions.
Okay, unfortunately, I haven't come up with my screen here, so go ahead. Carol first, and then Linda.
Okay. Will this also be going to the Transportation Committee? Because I think that is related to this.
Yeah, we'll forward it through to the Transportation. It's going to be on the agenda for the school board in the Transportation Committee section.
And also for the Transportation Committee of the City of Richmond?
Yes, I'm prepared to bring it to the next meeting.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Linda, I see your hand now. My screen keeps moving around. Yeah, Linda?
Can't hear you.
Linda, you're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. This is very similar to the issue at Manoa Steve's that we discussed at Public Works last week. But, I think it's more than a transportation issue. And I think we all know that, schools that are in Richmond, many of them are 40, 50 years old, they weren't meant to handle the traffic that we're seeing in and around schools right now. And I think more and more people are trying to get outside and access park spaces. I think this happened already at McKinney. It's happening at Westwind. And so I think perhaps it's going to be, I don't know, and perhaps this is something that we can look at, if more areas that border schools are experiencing these issues as well. We want people to be safe. Some of these roads are not meant to have cars parked and then, 2 lanes of traffic and then there's a path. So it may be something that becomes, a larger issue later on. Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay, now on to our regular agenda. Item, engaging artists in the community program public art projects. Juliana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here to present the report, and I don't have anything else to add, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions?
Another good report. Move the recommendation.
Was there anybody here to discuss this with it? I've noticed a couple of people are in the audience today. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Item 3, amendment to the Sports Wall of Fame. Nominated committee terms of reference. Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along with my report and the recommendation contained in my report, I'd like to make one additional request, add an amendment to the Richmond Sports Wall of Fame terms of reference under Council Policy 8711, Sports Wall of Fame. And specifically that the reference to the ceremony happening in council chambers be removed, and that if I may propose the following updated wording for the policy.
Okay.
Okay. My proposed wording would be, inductees will be invited to a ceremony hosted by the City of Richmond in a civic facility mutually agreed to by Council and the Richmond Sports Wall of Fame Nominating Committee, ceremony to be held a minimum of once every 3 years. So this is page 55 of your council package, and it's attachment number 2, and it's updating the wording with regards to number 6 in the terms of reference.
Move the amendment and the report.
Okay, it's been moved. Second. Any discussion or questions from committee? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Thanks, Greg. And Greg, I think you've got the next one. Outdoor sports fields and amenities allocation policy.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to add to this report and happy to take any questions.
Move the recommendations. It's been supported by Sports Council.
Moved, seconded. Any, we got one question. Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you for the report. And I just wanted to ask about the 70% residents. Does that then match what we have for ICE users?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail. No, because the ICE users are their allocation policy is contained within the RACA. RACA looks after their policy.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure there wouldn't be any issues. Thank you.
Thanks.
My question. Thank you. Through Chair to staff. My question is just to be able to explain this to a current user of a crossbox. How will it change under the new policy? So, for example, someone goes with their kid and they want to shoot around. There's organized games in progress when they get there. How will any of that be altered as a result of this policy?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. Thank you. Right now, the two groups that book our lacrosse boxes are Richmond Lacrosse and occasionally Richmond ball hockey. And again, they book them. We could put signage up during their season to say that there may be a practice during this time. Their practices are weather dependent and coach availability, and hopefully sometime in the future getting back to games. So it's on some nights and it's off other nights, but we could provide a base schedule for the season and post that at each of the boxes.
Okay, terrific. Thanks to the chair and to staff. Would that be, do we need further direction or would that be implied that we can do that at all sites going forward with this report being approved? Is that my reason?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf. Yeah, this is, to me, this would be a housekeeping item, and it's customer service, and we're happy to oblige. What we'll do is we'll put laminated. We'll work with both clubs to ensure that we have laminated schedules up there from spring break until the end of lacrosse season, which is first couple of weeks of July.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from committee? Someone like to move?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay, next item, let's see, we're on to pools. Proposed 2021 operating hours for the season outdoor pool, and I see we have a couple of delegates as well. So perhaps we could hear from John and then have any discussion and then invite the delegation.
Great. Thank you very much. I just want to add that, the Recreation Department receives a lot of requests for expanded services at all of our aquatic facilities. We've worked really hard with the petitioners as well as the Aquatic Advisory Board to find solutions to accommodate everyone's needs. By creating some efficiencies, the proposed schedule increases the public and lake swimming opportunities for all residents and stays within the approved operating budget. We've shared with the lead petitioners as well as the Aquatic Advisory Board that we will work better to market and promote the pool, to increase the attendance so that we can work in the future to justify a future increase, to increase the operating hours and the corresponding budget. And it should also be noted that all of our aquatic centers are well utilized by seniors. And in fact, since last September, over 34% of the guests attending the very successful Mineru Center for Active Living are seniors. I'm pleased to be here and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions?
I got questions, Harold.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, you've supposedly increased the number of hours for Steveston, but didn't in 2019 we have about 523 hours, given your report last year?
Yes.
We're way down. We're way down. We're not increasing.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty. So the report outlines that we're increasing over our base budget in 2018 and previous. 2019 was a special year. We did a trial basis and we increased the hours just for 2019 only. And we used funding because the Mineru Center for Active Living was not yet open. And so we used some funding, tried to increase the hours at Steveston Pool to see if more people would come. And in fact, our attendance showed that less people came per hour than previous years.
Well, if we don't open the pool, they're not going to come if they don't know it. Can we get a cost breakdown of the Steveston Pool revenues and expenses? You know, I see it where the costs are going to be about $13,000 if you increase it, but I'd like to see a financial statement. I think I asked for it last year too, but I didn't get it. But I'd like to see it with the hybrid mock schedule that I asked for last year, and I didn't get. So if I could, through the chair, record in the minutes that I asked for cost breakdown of the Steveston Pool. I have another question. Whose decision is it? You've written in your report on page 78 that the pool basically opens a Victoria Day weekend. And then I see May 1st, which is May 24th. So why cannot the pool be open for, say, the first or second week in September if we're not going to start till the 24th weekend?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty. The pool opens to the general public on the Victoria Day weekend. Traditionally, that's when we've done it, and that aligns traditionally with public swimming pools throughout the Lower Mainland. There's not a public swimming pool in the Lower Mainland that I'm aware of that opens to the general public before Victoria Day weekend. We open the Steveston Pool on May the 1st just for the Key Goose Swim Club. We do not staff that pool for them. They provide their own lifeguards, their certified lifeguards, to manage their operation from May 1st on.
Okay. Do the Key Goose, and they're finished the summer. Now, that's great that they look after it and staff it. So if we're opening on the 24th, you made a comment that we possibly can go into September, but in the very next breath, you say, well, Watermania is not going to have maintenance, and we don't know about active living. I would like us to at least try to go to first or second week in September to see how things go and see what the public would do, especially over the Labor Day weekend. You know, Gary Point Park is going to be absolutely jammed. Steve's is going to be jammed to Labor Day, and here might be an opportunity to derive some revenue if we have the pool open at least the Labor Day weekend and maybe the first week and beyond, and try it as a trial basis. And if there is additional cost and you don't have the budget, we have other funds that we can go to. As a councillor, we have a community initiative fund that's got thousands of dollars in it. We've got other funds, council contingency, and if we're talking about 10 grand for you, I'd be more than happy to look for it. If we could utilize it. I think it's important, and Councillor McPhail mentioned earlier, people are just looking to get out and get in, and we're not going to be over this pandemic by September. We're going to still be in it, and if we can open the pool and keep it viable for a couple hundred people, and even the swim club, I'm more than happy to try to find some money. I think it's worth every penny that we've got, and I'd like to refer that to staff to look at the first or second week, what it would cost, and then I'd like to put it on the council agenda to let councilors debate where the money comes from. Because we have some reserves, and we have funds of council that we don't spend the money, and it sits there. And I think we should be using it, especially during these times. So I'd like that report in the minutes, that request, and I would support staff on a report that would be coming back.
Okay, I think we've got a referral coming up, but let's hear from the delegation. And, Alexa Liu wants to make a comment right now, and then we'll go to the delegation.
Oh, thank you. I did notice that Councillor McPhail and Councillor Day did have their hands up before I did, so.
Oh, okay.
Not to upset the apple cart.
Yeah, okay, my screen just shows, I'm not sure why it doesn't show them. Okay, who else is on there?
Councillor Day and Councillor McPhail both had their hands up before I did.
Okay, which one was first?
The chair.
Yeah, okay, Councillor McPhail, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. So it's my understanding that right now with the indoor pools, you have to register whether you're going for a family swim or swimming lessons or for links. Do we know what the public health order is going to be for outdoor pools?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, no, we don't know what the public health orders are going to be. They're changing all the time. They're modifying, and so we can't predict what they're going to be right now. But they don't really get into the specifics of how to manage the pool and manage volumes and how many swimmers we can allow. There's some other guidelines that we have that we use as through Vancouver Coastal Health, Life Saving Society, etc., BCRPA, that can kind of give us some guidelines. So they don't specify exactly how many people would be allowed in the pool, but they don't have any specific things around outdoor pools. What we have heard from Vancouver Coastal Health is that pools are a safe environment. Both indoor and outdoor pools, they feel are a safe environment during this time right now.
So, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, if I could just clarify, we would fully expect that the same booking system that exists in place for the indoor pools and existed for the outdoor pools last summer would continue this summer at Steveston Outdoor Pool in order for us to manage contact tracing, swimmer volumes, and other things. So we would not anticipate any change coming up this summer.
So it's going to be, attendance is limited, and so revenue is limited.
That is the most likely outcome, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much to the chair, to staff. So I feel the same way as Councillor McNulty. It seems to me we have an underutilized asset, and all the weather patterns have changed. Now, summer now goes well into September, and it doesn't make any sense to me to close down a perfectly viable pool when people still want to swim because the weather is usually quite good at the beginning of September. So I would suggest that we look at weather patterns of the past 5 years and make that part of our consideration for extending the pool days.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. I sit on the Aquatics Advisory Board, and I'd like to thank the Aquatics Advisory Board for their work on this, because they've done quite a bit of work on working with staff and trying to figure out different ways to maximize the number of hours that were available and the opportunities that were available to people, and that's why they came up with this sort of staggered times and working with the swim club as well to try and stagger the times, make sure that people who work or have different needs can still have access to the outdoor pool to have some outdoor pool time. there has been an issue with the aquatics that the Aquatics Advisory Board did note recently with the people making their reservations. Is there's been a lot of no-shows recently, and so I'm sure they're going to be looking at resolving that and what that looks like when it comes to working with the outdoor pool. When we look at the number of hours that were used for the outdoor pool on that 2019 year, you're seeing in those early season and late season that, it's like 20 people per day that are coming in. And so, I don't know what the daily cost is to open a pool, but I think it's close to $1,000 a day to open a pool. So for 20 people, I think that's, is that our best use of dollars for that? And 1 week, because I think it rained in June, nobody showed up that week. So that's kind of disheartening to think that we're going to open a pool, we're not going to have the number of attendants we want. It's figuring out how we get the right mix for the people. And I know that we did receive the memorandum back in January on the Aquatics Services Board from the outgoing Mr. Smith, who was leaving, and he talked about sort of a lack of ability to budget some of the numbers, and then the information's come through the advisory board that one of the challenges to tracking the revenue is that people have passes to any pool, and then they can come to Steveston or come to any of the pools and use those passes. So, I think we've got the daily attendance numbers. We see how many bodies are actually in the water, and we can maybe look at that and determine if it actually does make sense. Maybe the first week or two it makes sense, but it drops off precipitously after that. And I know, my complex has a pool, and we see it ourselves that the numbers drop off precipitously at the end of September. So, while it's not necessarily a huge increase that is being achieved, there's more access at different times to that pool for more people, and longer swim hours during the lunch hours for more people. So, I think this hybrid model actually does a lot, and it was approved by the Aquatics Advisory Board. So I would recommend that the committee accept this one and then look further at the possibilities of what it looks like to add extra hours in the summer, because adding an extra lifeguard every day for 10, 12 swimmers maybe isn't our best use of city funds here.
Okay, anything further? Let's hear from the delegation.
Hello, my name is Jim McGrath, and my associate, Louise Schaefer, is also in attendance.
Okay, go ahead.
Pardon me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, good afternoon to you all. Thank you for allowing us to present to this committee. We represent the 109 signed petitioners from the year 2019 and the many other length swimmers at Steveston Pool that were not accounted for by the 2019 petition. Last year we worked hard with the city's aquatic services staff to arrive at an equitable schedule for the usage of the Steveston Pool for the 2020 season. Concessions that had been made last year to accommodate the mandate of the aquatic services staff and the needs of the public wishing to swim lengths and have more opportunities to use the Steveston Pool. In 2020, we believed, after all of those meetings, that the season start date really could be changed from what the petition asked for, which was May 1st. But change it to the long weekend in May. That's the start of the season. We were fine with that, with the understanding the pool will be kept open through September. We also understood that the length swims were to be scheduled for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday during the months of May and June. A mutually agreed upon schedule was developed in 2020 with equitable solutions for all user groups. It was approved by, we understood that it was approved by the aquatic services staff, the length swimmers, the focus group attendees, and the pool users who signed the petition. This agreement obviously was not feasible to implement due to the COVID-19 restrictions. Instead, the 2020 swim season saw only length swimming in the main pool, with groups able to book the top pool area. This brought in more new length swimmers than previously expected. We also acquired additional swimmers during the 2020 season in that people who took their lunch hours from work to swim lengths during the hours of noon to 2 p.m. appeared, far more than expected in our assessment. This time slot was constantly booked full, and with the wait list also full, there was often no way to accommodate more people who wanted to swim. City of Richmond has a mandate to promote the health and welfare of its residents. This pandemic is not over, and outdoor facilities are still the safest area for activities, particularly with respect to seniors' demographic. We're here because we have learned from the 2021 season that our previously stated concerns and recommendations appear to have been bypassed by the Aquatic Services team, based on their rationale that there's no budget and the need to give priority for pool use to other user groups. We have never been given any information or documentation to support the no budget situation and have been further restricted in our ability to question or counter-propose the newest schedule. We have no desire to reduce the hours of pool usage for any other user group. We wish only to be given a more equitable, reasonable schedule for length swimmers and other public swimmers. We therefore suggest, for your consideration, that the public be able to swim lengths from the May long weekend through to the end of September. The schedule should allocate the hours of noon to 2 p.m. on weekdays to public length swimming to accommodate people who are working and want to use their lunch hour for weekend times. Currently, it's later than a noon start in the proposed schedule from Aquatic Services. We also suggest the schedule allow for length swimming in the main pool separate from lessons or other defined user groups. Certain combinations of public and other groups have resulted in some serious safety issues in the pool. Some swimmers were injured. This committee is asking this committee is asked to consider the schedule that has been agreed upon for the 2020 pool season for implementation this year, the 2021 season. Of course, this is obviously subject to any restrictions that may be imposed by the provincial and regional health authorities due to the pandemic. Thank you all for your time and your consideration of our concerns and recommendations.
Thank you. Louise, do you have any further comments? Okay, any questions from committee? Carol Day, your hand is up. I'm not sure if it's up.
Yeah,
for this.
I put it up again. So if the concern is attendance, it's a pretty simple idea. We've got lifeguards there, whether it's rain or shine. If we are worried about filling the pool and making sure we're getting good utilization by the public, let's make rain days free days. I bet the place will be packed.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Any questions of the delegation?
Yeah, Councilor Wolfie.
Yeah, okay, Michael.
Oh, thank you very much. Through the chair, I think it's just questions to staff at the moment. So maybe I'll start on page 86, which shows the proposed hybrid model, the attachment number 5 with the chart. So maybe some of these can be spelled out real quick. Questions that I thought I'd ask here. So one is, I'll start on the left and go right. The school board rentals from May to June. So I'm aware of the school board, but I see there's quite a high demand from the 2018. There was only nearly half of that was offered to school districts, to the school board rental. I'm seeing maybe, is there that much demand that needs to take up that much of the time, or could that public swim be extended and have more lane options from Monday to Friday in May and June?
To the chair, to Councillor Wolf. So those school board rentals are only the last 2 weeks of June. So we were attempting to put the grid in there, but they actually only take place the last 2 weeks. So the demand comes when the last 2 weeks when the kids are doing their end of the year activities, that sort of thing. And so it's not in May and June. It's just those last 2 weeks in June. And it's a demand sort of thing. So they they book it. We've got it blocked off, and we book it, and it's a cost recovery model. So they pay enough to recover the staff wages whenever they want to come, like a rental.
Great. Then thank you for that. Then to follow up on that one through the chair to staff. So before those last 2 weeks, does that mean there's more there? The public swim, the blue, takes up more of that time, or is it still starting at the same time that it shows here?
Yes, yeah, to the chair and the councillor. Well, so the pool, we don't have public swimming in Steveston Pool, only on the weekends from Victoria Day. So from Victoria Day till the end of June, typically the only public swimming is, including length swimming, is on the weekend. That's what we historically have done, and so there is all kinds of availability time to have schedule other swims, but it becomes a cost-benefit situation. How many swimmers are we really going to attract there? And to Councillor Liu's point, there's a cost to that. Particularly in the May and June, it's when the weather is not great, there's not going to be a lot of people turning up, and so it does get costly.
Thank you. Then just to clarify again on that point, through the chair of staff. So does that mean that from the opening date, there's an hour and a half of public swim as it's labeled, from that, starting that first week, no matter the school board rental demand that you mentioned in the last 2 weeks? So let's say that it's the first week of June. Is there more than an hour and a half of public swim?
Through the chair to councillor. Well, only on the weekends. Public swim would only be on the weekends.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I was figuring. Issue there. And then the next thing, July and August, through the chair of staff on this one, is I'm seeing lessons written in greenish color and then again in purple. Is that different age groups, or could the lessons and swim lengths be through all of that time?
Through the chair to councillor. Well, so this was what we were trying to do here is we were trying to see how we could accommodate some of the wishes and requests of the petitioners by still staying within our operating budget. So we're trying to be more efficient. So an example of this particular one is they would typically, in the past, their length swim or public swim is really only an hour over the noon hour. So we figure that if we stretched out the lessons time a little bit more, we could actually make their time a 2-hour time block, but we would also have a couple of lanes where we were doing lessons at the same time, and then we become efficient from a staffing point of view, but get them some more hours in there.
Great. I appreciate the innovative work on that. Then, I guess one final question then is, all the areas where it says public swim in the schedule, how are the allocations, or does it change based on who's there? So, like, are 2 lanes for fast, 2 lanes for medium, and 1.5 for walking, or is it not? Or like, are they all the same, or do they change? I'm not familiar with swimming there. I was just at Watermania last weekend, so I'm just not clear. If you could clarify that part.
Through the chair to councillor Wolf, great question. I think it really depends on the time of day. We do empower some staff to make some changes depending on what the demands are of the pool at the time. But generally speaking, if you look at the July-August proposed time frame, we would have public swim 6 to 7 in the morning on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's proposed. That's new to what we've had in the past. And that's all going to be length swimming, because there isn't going to be people that come at 6 o'clock in the morning to splash with their kids in the pool. So we know that that's typically going to be all length swimming. Whereas in the evening there, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in the evening, you're going to have a mix there. And so you're going to have, to allow the families and the youth to come in there and splash around the pool. But then we also have 2 lanes available for lane swimming at that time as well. So all public swims, we have some lanes available for lane swimming. It really depends on the time of the day, the week, and what the demand is.
Thank you. That's all my questions for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Councillor Steve. I'm hearing that there's some interest in understanding better the finances of what extending noon hour swims into the fall would be. And I'm just wondering if it would be agreeable to council if we provide a memo by Friday outlining the costs and giving more information on the revenues and expenses as per Councillor McNulty's request that might allow you to consider this at the council meeting.
Okay, we'll take that.
I want just I want the annual cost and revenues as well. And I'd like to know what it would cost to open the pool from Labor Day to September 15th and then September 30th.
We could provide that through the chair.
Okay, Bill, is that acceptable to you as a referral to refer?
Wow, yeah,
bring it back
I got it last year, so maybe we'll get it this year. It's just like your Britannia referral.
Yeah. So would you like to make a motion
to receive the report?
And that staff prepare
a memo. A memo's great. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Staff
before Monday. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So move that we receive the report and staff prepare a memo to answer Councilman McNulty and others' questions prior to the council meeting. Any further discussion? Michael, your hand is up.
Thank you. Maybe it's more clarification. So if we're receiving this for information, I'd like to make an amendment at the council meeting, or should I? Is there still opportunity now so that in the report, what I'd like to have the language is that we begin by including all of September in the proposed operating time frame, and maybe the information that we get in the memo, maybe then we would reduce it down. But I think at this point, I would like to be supporting a motion that has the date of the pool open to some agreeable amount of hours midday for public swim through September. So can I still make that amendment now, or should I just vote against this and bring up the amendment?
I think that's in my request, Michael, but I'll support whatever you want to do to clarify it for English.
Okay, can we combine the two?
Yes. Yeah, we can combine the two. Okay, that's basically what I'm asking for.
So, Mr. Chair, and I may need the clerk to assist us with this, but I think if you just receive the report for information, it won't go forward to the council meeting. So I think what I hear you perhaps wanting to do is move the recommendation with the addition of hours, length swimming hours in September, or at least that's what I just heard, and then you would decide at the council meeting based on the financial information that was provided to you in advance whether you would support that or not at that time. Mr. Matt, is that correct?
I think that's Michael's motion. Bill, is that acceptable?
I can support Michael's motion too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Only there was one motion, so I'm trying to get one motion together out of the whole thing.
That's got it. That's covered it.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion then? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? I don't see any hands up saying contrary. Carried. Okay, next item is the, where are we here? Agriculture. Yeah, the Agriculture Land Commission non-farm use application for community gardens and at the Garden City lands. And it's Jason and Alex.
Hello, this is Alex Kraniewski, Park Planner, and I have nothing further to add, and I'm available to answer any and all questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question, Harold.
Yep.
I guess my question is, great report, thank you. My question is, you in your request to the Land Commission, can we have the term community gardens without numbers? The reason being, I would hate them to come back and say, well, yeah, you can put 100 gardens or 50 gardens. What if we want 500 gardens on the Garden City land? So I'm wondering, can we leave that when we apply that we go with the use, not the number of the use?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I think that would not be possible. My understanding is that we would probably get a question from the ALC that would likely be like, how many and how many people, and that's the key, because the number of people and the number of cars we'd like to also accommodate is the non-farm use that we're asking them to approve. So
take that under advisement. So what is the maximum number of plots that you feel that we could do, given your thoughts on total expansion today? Is it only 200?
At this time, we're advising that we could do 200 with an option to expand to another 100, so a total of 300. That said, please keep in mind that what we're proposing is a semi-permanent community garden, and the future community gardens that would be on the lands would be permanent because they would be in ground. And at that time, with council's direction and advice, we like to have that discussion on actually how many we would have on the site, and what that number is would be subject to planning.
Okay, I'm trying to support you, but I'd like to go in with Augusto now and letting him know our intention. So I'll support what's here, but I'm hoping that we are able to maybe do some more down the road.
Good. Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. Well, thank you for the report, and I support the recommendation. Now, I do have a couple questions. So I'm the liaison to REAC, and at our February meeting, we had a presentation by Ian Lai, who's the executive director of the Richmond Food Security Society, who manages the plots. So he said that right now they're managing 415 plots. There's 464 people on the wait list, and usually you're on that list for about 2 years. Now, he mentioned that there's 170 plot expansion this year. Is this the 200 you're talking about, the 170 he mentioned, or is it 170 plus 200?
Through the chair, Ian is actually scheduled to speak this after this item, or in reference to this item, I should say. So perhaps he could address that in his presentation. What I can say is that we're looking at the 200 for the Garden City lands, and also we have a citywide community garden capital budget program that was recently approved, and we're looking at in excess of approximately 100. I have to get back to you with the specific number, but all this to say is that the number of community garden plots we like to bring online in 2021 is in excess of the 170 that was quoted.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And this kind of goes to Councillor McNulty's point. I mean, with 464 people on the wait list, I mean, you know, they're not all of them going to get a plot. And if you're waiting over 2 years, I mean, that's a long time. So we know the demand is there. And so I guess we're going to have to figure out at some point how many can we put on the Garden City lands and how many we can put in other areas. My second question is, you mentioned the community gardens are going to be in ground. Now, I know at Richmond High School, and it's been a long time since I've been there, but all the plots, they're raised so that seniors can access them. Has there been any thought to doing that, having a portion of the 200 or the 300 that we're going to have, so that it's easier for people like seniors or people with different kinds of abilities can work on a raised garden platform?
Right. Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, allow me to clarify. What is being proposed now as the semi-permanent community gardens on the gravel pad are going to be in raised beds. And they are going to be, the vessel, the structure is to be determined. but because it will be there for a number of years, they like it to be durable. Either way, it's going to be above ground, imported soil. The ideal, and once we've conducted the soil remediation study on the Garden City lands and have determined the best approach to cultivate in ground, in the soil on the land, then those semi-permanent community garden plots that we're proposing with this non-farm use application will be, in a sense, transferred to in-ground plots. Yes, of course, those can be built such that either they're mounded or have timber or raised beds for universal access, not only for elderly people, but also physically disabled people.
All right. Thanks very much.
Michael.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, two questions for staff. The first one pertains to the I guess non-designation on the Garden City lands. So this is on our page 91. I'm not sure if you can update us. This is just an image of the ecological network management map, and the Garden City lands is still labeled as the special study area. So is it still in that state, or has it? Will it one day move to become an environmental sensitive area, or do we actually have to get that change done at the next OCP? Or I guess we could amend the OCP to make that change. Is that where we're at for that? Because we just heard reference today from Mike with Quatland, like they're doing work for the wildlife, understanding that they're farming in a sustainable way for the ecological zone they're in. So they're demonstrating it. I think if anything, the city should reach out the appropriate zoning that we have so that it supports the work they're doing, and it'll help direct the rest of the work. So that's my first question.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it's my understanding that the site is zoned agricultural, and but be that as it may, we're managing the site in ecological fashion, and as well as part of the license to use agreement we have between the city and KPU is that KPU has provided a farm management plan for the western half of the site. And part of that farm management plan outlines the ecological and sustainable approach to agriculture and management of the site, which we are implementing.
All right. Thank you for that response. I'm still maybe searching. Maybe I can have some dialogue offline here with staff on where that appropriate amendment could take place. Maybe it has to be a planning meeting, actually. I'm not sure. And then the second question I had relates to page 96. So this shows the map. There's nothing in the report specifically about the parking, but my next question is about parking. So on 96, it shows the kind of 20 some odd stalls. And then the next page, or page 98, the second bullet from the top, it says the number, I'm not sure it's 20 or higher or lower, and it hasn't been finalized. Are we able to get a picture? Is it gravel underneath? Is it porous material? Is it going to have like that grid where grass can grow underneath it? And then the other part to that is if a vehicle is there and it's a gas-powered vehicle and it's dripping, is that a different containment area, or that parking area, does that just drain with the rest of the groundwater and stormwater and move around? So is there some containment to that parking elevated space for drainage, and what is the ground surface going to look like?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the ground surface is the existing gravel pad. And with respect to your second question, I'd have to respond after I consult with my colleagues in environment to see if you know what's the appropriate best practice, if you will, with respect to vehicles parked on that site.
Great. Yeah. Through the chair, then, just to follow up on that one, then, like we think at Terra Nova, for example, when people go there, there's the gravel parking, and I'm not sure if there's leak or contamination there. Which way does that run? neither way is good. One way goes to agricultural use, the other one goes to the Fraser River. So if there's some way that it can be monitored, because I know the city's taken quite a good initiative at starting with Mitchell Island, trying to diagnose where contamination, or when it occurs and what it is, and how to address it immediately. So hopefully the development of this as a somewhat permanent parking space, we could have some baseline data as that unfolds. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before I invite Ian? Okay, Ian, would you like to join us? And maybe you can answer some of you heard the questions, so maybe you could answer the question on numbers. EMI.
Okay, all right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me join in. In answer to Councillor Wolf's question about ecological sensitivity, I think as we develop the space at Garden City Lands, our agreement will probably have more writing in, considering that it is an ecologically sensitive area, and just making sure that compliance is followed in that area. So we want to make sure that we're supporting what the city would like to do. With Councillor McPhail, the number on the wait list has risen to 575 as of today. I think once the piece went to the newspaper, everybody started jumping in and signing on. So that's a good sign. And those, we've been doing this for many, many years, and I just want to, send my thanks and appreciation to Council for the ongoing support, and the parks crew that has always been there when we needed it. Today, a pipe broke. I made a phone call. Next thing you know, it's all looked after. We've been working closely with the Parks Department and the city and councillors over the many years. And I think when I speak with other municipalities and I say this is the relationship that we have, they go, "Wow, that's truly amazing." So your leadership in food systems and food security is important. The grants that we receive through the Parks Department and through Council has allowed us to maintain a really high level, and every year it seems to improve. We just went through a whole system this morning with the team to change some of the regulations that we've had that are becoming redundant or outdated. So we're actually phasing out certain parts, and it's always under review. I think the community garden area at Garden City Lands is really important. It will help to reduce social isolation. It will provide a sense of community and the diversity and the inclusion that is part of our city. It ties in really well with the OCP, the Vancouver Coastal Health Wellness Strategy, the Farming First Strategy. It's a great place for people to gather and learn together. So I think, as we move ahead and start to consider this as a big piece of our community, kudos goes off to you folks for supporting this all the way. So it's important for us in the community.
Okay, and I've got a question for you. Someone's asking the question earlier, is how many are available? So we'll list 200. How many do we have to add on to that? And is there any place that you know of where we could add more? Because I can tell you, we sell seeds, and last year we ran out of seeds. This year we're running out of seeds, even though we increased our production. People are really into gardening through the pandemic, and a lot of them are looking ahead and saying, wow, we're going into another pandemic, not of COVID-19, but in terms of climate change. So people are desperate to get garden plots and get gardening. So what do we do?
I think, Richmond is a wide area, and putting it all within one central area doesn't make sense. We've looked into areas to expand at Cook Elementary, behind Cook Elementary on Eckersley. We're looking at perhaps out at Pollock to expand a little bit more. Along the railway corridor would also allow that to happen. I know a while back there was discussion around the Alexander Parkway by the Walmart Mall at next to Garden City, but that would probably be redundant if we're on Garden City lands. So I think working with parks, always looking ahead and thinking where could possible community gardens pop up is really important. I know at Houma by Railway, the school district is shifting their garden beds back into school grounds, so that will free space up. The ongoing need is going to continue as we move into, a more food systems approach to growing and living.
Okay, thanks. Alex.
Through the chair, to the chair and the committee, I'd just like to add that we work closely with RFSS to manage and engage their ability to take on new plots and certainly work together so that we can roll out appropriate number of plots for the community to address the wait list, but at the same time make sure that we put an adequate number that can actually be managed properly and in a staged manner, so that it also coincides with RFSS's grant applications for supporting the management of those community gardens.
Okay, Alex, I've got a further question, and we've got to move on. But these, what you might say, portable garden beds, after they're used in 2 or 3 years from now on the Garden City lands, will you be looking at, there may be areas that have concrete or blacktop or things like that that are unusable. Can we find some sites like that that don't even have soil to put them on? Because I think this is a brilliant idea.
Well, thank you very much for that compliment. Yes, in fact, that is the case. That's what I had in mind, and also credit where credit's due as well. Just Michael Abelman's efforts with Soul Food Farms in Vancouver. I've been really looking into that model, and those sorts of containers to be used elsewhere. So once we've remediated the site and addressed any issues of soil on the Garden City lands, the temporary or the semi-permanent community gardens would become in-ground community gardens, and then those above-ground containers could be used on sites that exactly what you were proposing.
Fantastic. Carol.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Alex, further to that, when I saw that these above-ground gardens are portable, have we ever considered contacting other private property owners? And I'll give you an example. Steveston Highway and number 3 Road, there are 2 lots to the east that have been sitting dormant and empty for decades. The same with Francis and number 3 Road, and there are dozens and dozens of more empty lots that are owned by private property owners. And if they're just going to sit empty anyhow, and these plots are portable, why could we not contact the owners of those properties and potentially scatter these portable plots all over the place?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, no, we have not considered that, but we can, and that sounds like a great idea. This is something that we could follow up on. I hope in 2 to 3 years' time, once we've successfully addressed the soil on the Garden City lands, and then we have that problem.
In Vancouver, at the corner of 41st and Oak, there's a big community garden, and it's all raised beds, and they say this is available for farming from this year to this year, and then after that, the owner is going to be developing the property, but it's still like 5 or 6 years that it can be used, and I guess, if I was a member of this committee, I'd be making that motion that we look into the possibility of expanding onto private property.
For sure. That is a model that we can easily replicate, yes.
I think that's exactly what Alex is intending, so that's great. Okay, any further comments or questions from committee?
Move the recommendation.
Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Carried. Okay, next item. We sort of had some discussion of it, but which wasn't exactly intended. But parks afloat moored at Imperial Landing and Gary Point Park. Jason.
So through the chair to committee, it's Todd here. Just before Jason responds to questions, we did want to highlight a few things, and we already did speak to this a little bit at the front end with the delegation, but we did want to remind committee that, this report does respond to two referrals, the moorage at Imperial Landing and moorage at Gary Point, given the interconnectedness of the two. And as I highlighted earlier, really based on our research, based on the referrals, based on where we are today, we are really recommending that any moorage expansion be put on hold until such a time that we have appropriate operational programming, dredging plans, and agreements are the critical ones in place before we move forward. So, answer any questions?
Yeah, I have a suggestion. I'd like to delete a couple of words out of your referral. And it says that it be placed on hold until such time as there is a plan and agreement in place for authorities for the ongoing maintenance dredging. That will never happen. Basically, I'm on the Harbor Authority Board, and we go year by year. And when we need to dredge the channel, we go and plead and beg, and they will give you some money to dredge it this year, and then we have to do it again next year. It used to be, I'm not sure whether the group used to do all the dredging all the time. It was automatic. But since it was turned over to the Port of Vancouver and the federal government, they will not agree to an ongoing maintenance project. So I'd like to suggest that we adopt recommendation 1 with the words "the ongoing" taken out of it, so it's in place from authorities for maintenance dredging. In other words, whenever we get it. It says the same thing, but it simply will never get ongoing.
Mr. Chair, we can do that, yes.
Then I'd like to suggest as well that the current piles at Gary Point be maintained to allow for seasonal event-related use, but I'd like staff to take a look at the recommendations on Parks 152 from the consultants of what we would have to do if we wanted to change that, because you have to do this 5 years in advance. And we may have to face some more rules before we even bring one ship in. So I think that there's some recommendations there on that page that the consultant said in terms of what authorities to deal with and in terms of where we put our floats. Even if we bring the Kailamaru in again, we may have problems. And I'd also like to suggest that staff look at, we looked at the potential for three sections of floats there. The ship shows that we only need 2, and even when we get the Kailamaru as the only ship, there's no reason to bring all the floats out of the harbor, but just 2 sections the length of the ship. And so I think we need to look at these things in advance, because I'm sure Bill will be going, and who knows, maybe even me, going out to Japan as soon as this COVID-19 is over to try and get a ship back. And if we could do it with just bringing 2 floats out of the harbor instead of the whole length of the Imperial float, it would be a lot better. And I think the plan that's shown in here of how to put 3 boats in, there was on, I forget what page it was, those diagrams are just excellent. But if we could do it with 2 floats and just simply one ramp going down, it would save us a lot of money. Eventually we could build 2 floats like that would go in and out. As we say we expand a float from Phoenix Netlock towards the Imperial Landing first, or from Imperial Landing to Phoenix Netlock, or whatever as shown in the reports, and we would have more floats that we could actually put out at Gary Point. But there's no reason to use all of those piles. And after we've had one more event, we may be able to remove some of the piles. So anyway, that's sort of what I'd like to suggest. Excellent report.
I second you put all those in, and I also, the dredging, I remember when I was on the Harbor Authority Board, Bob Baziak begging Ottawa to give us $100,000 to dredge, and the Harbor Authority would put $100,000 in. So you're not going to get any dredging money unless we come up with it. As you know, Harold, so I support you 100%.
Yeah.
I have a question, though, of staff, if I may. What services are at the dock Imperial Landing, and who supervises the guest boats that show up there from time to time? I call them guest boats, other than poachers.
Through the chair, Councilor McNulty, we'll let Emily speak to this one.
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, our Parks Programs team is currently responsible for the dock down at Imperial Landing.
And we do liaise with local authorities for boats that show up unwanted, let's say, and work with them on ways to try to move them on. But yes, we currently do our best to keep boats that aren't wanted down at that dock off of it. And then for boats that do approach us and are wanting to stay there for whatever it might be, whatever reasons might be, yes, we definitely weigh the pros and cons and look at the uses of the dock and make sure we have enough space to offer recreational moorage and recreational activities.
Could I put a follow-up on that? I have no problem with them coming in. I'd like to know what the tariff is if they're there. There's 3 boats down there that have been there forever. But do we have services down there? And what would we charge them for coming in? I have no problem coming in. I think it's great. But they should pay a fee because everybody at the Harbor Authority pays a fee. And do we have water and electricity down for them? And I guess my other big question is, what do we do with their wastes? Does it go back into the channel and out to the sea, or and become part of the plastic that's out there, or whatever? So, do we have policies on that? That's my question.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the only services that are provided to boats is just power, electricity. We don't provide water, although water hookups are available at the dock. It's not something we offer to the transient moorage users. Typically, boats are only supposed to be at the dock for 3 days, and then they're supposed to move on. It is designed as a transient moorage dock. We are aware that a few boats have been down there for a very lengthy period of time. Because they're just supposed to be there for 3 days, they're not supposed to be dumping waste or anything into the waterway, obviously, but it is currently out of our control what those couple of boats are doing that are down there because we don't have the services to offer them ways of dumping or anything like that.
And Emily, they pay a fee, right?
Sorry, yes.
Who has control of that? Who has control? The Harbor Authority?
We are working with different jurisdictions at the moment, but I'm not too sure who has that control. It's something we could look into and get back to you on. And then, sorry, just to touch base on the fee, currently boats are required to pay moorage of it's $1 per foot for 24 hours, and so if they have a 20-foot boat, then they're paying $20 for 24 hours with the option, obviously, that they're supposed to only be there for 3 days and then move on.
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, we need a referral to staff. There are too many unanswered questions here. We're not managing that area of the channel well, and if we've got services and we're going to allow people to come in and stay, then I think whether it be the Britannia Shipyard, the Steveston Harbor Authority, or city staff, I think we've got to have some policies and procedures down, okay? Because I think it'll continue to expand, and this may be the start of recreational boat enthusiasts coming into Steveston. So I think we need to have a referral to staff to highlight these issues and how we might address them.
Yeah, if I could add one further thing to your comment and to what a comment I made earlier. If we get more boats coming into the harbor, you don't have to dredge. And that's what people don't realize. The Steveston Harbor is filling up because the fish boats don't fish anymore. But the prop wash of the boats keeps the harbor clear. And if you've got boats coming and going constantly, if you had several hundred boats an hour going in, there'd be no need to dredge. And so the more boats we get moving in and out, and moving in and out, not just sitting there for 3 or 4 weeks or a month or a year, the less need for dredging. When I asked the question about, that's in the report, about the moorage area north of the Imperial Landing float between there and the dike, that was where BC Packers, it was the deepest part of the harbor.
Yes. And
Packers kept it clear because it was seine boat moorage, and the prop wash from the seine boats kept it clear. It never had to be dredged. And I think the report says there's only a meter of water there now. I'm not sure what held the dike up. I suspect Packers had lots of rock filled in there before Imperial Landing and the city rebuilt the dike. But that was the deepest moorage anywhere, but it never, ever silted up. because their boats were moving. So I think that that's something people should consider, that if we get, and I think the idea that the Britannia shipyard has of starting with the Imperial landing and the Britannia float, once you get boats coming in there, there'll be less need to dredge there, and as you expand, there'll be less, you'll simply have to dredge once and keep the boats coming in and out, and you won't have to dredge quite as much. Anyway, I'm not sure what kind of referral we need on this one, but
I'd move a referral to staff to address the issues of moorage on the Imperial Landing wharf, and how and what can be done in terms of providing for it, and also what can be done to eliminate it if we don't want it. Do we see it as a council as a positive thing? I think it's a positive thing.
And of course, you've already got the referral on Britannia looking at it as well. Okay, before we move to the referral,
should be included in it too. I think we need to look at it. We got issues, and if we turn our head on it, we'll never get anywhere.
Yeah, Michael.
Oh, thanks. It was just actually to add to that referral would be what's called as vessel sewage pump outs. So I think, as far as I've been able to locate, there's two around Richmond. There's one at Shady Island, and there's one at the Vancouver Marina, which is in Richmond. So I'm not sure if there is one in Stephen, or if it's Stephen Harbor Authority and it just doesn't show up in the other databases I've searched. So that could be found out by staff, and if there's options that we could either tap into an existing sanitary station and run it so that vessels can use it. And if a vessel is meant to leave every 3 days, maybe that's one of the things that they have to leave for, and that to prove that they've gone to use it. Right? It's a tool, but it's illegal to pump out at a dock. So in a sensitive area like we're talking about here. So if that could be friendly added to that referral. Thanks.
Yes, no problem. Accepted. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got a somewhat extended referral here. Anything further from committee?
Move all the recommendations.
Okay, I hope staff's got it. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Okay, that brings us to manager's report.
We have two very brief ones, and we'll be really brief. Staff, please.
Okay, go ahead.
I will go first, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update on the provincial health orders. March 11th, the health orders were updated to allow 10 persons to gather outside. As that relates to sports, our children and youth sport groups still must maintain 3-meter spacing out on the fields. They cannot play games or scrimmages. It's still only about skills and drills and individual skill development. As the 10 persons now allow some adults to get out onto the sport fields, but again, it's 3-meter spacing, no spectators, no games, no scrimmages, and individual skill development. Because it's not games, we're in my conversations with some of our adult youth groups, they're waiting on the sidelines, hoping that we will someday soon be able to get back to games. So for the most part, they are parked until further notice, until the health orders change. The exceptions are K-Jacks. Their masters athletes are out at the track. We also have pickleball is playing singles pickleball, and we've updated all our public tennis court signs to now allow doubles because of the spacing or size of a tennis court in relation to a pickleball court. That's it. Thank you.
Linda, you got your hand up. Did I miss you on the last issue, or?
So I have a question of staff at the end. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next staff person.
Thank you. I have a quick update on registration. As was noted earlier in the meeting, because of the public health orders, individuals need to register for all of the activities, which typically were drop-in. And I wanted to highlight for you that as a result of this, on Monday morning, or on Mondays, we're seeing an average of 12,000 people register every Monday, on average for drop-in activities for the following week. With spring break coming, those 2 weeks we did see unusually high attendance. On the first week of spring break, we saw just under 19,500 people in that one day. On the following Monday, we saw just under 18,500 people. And then on the remaining days of the week, we would see about 2,100 people registering. So we are seeing a lot of use of our facilities and people coming out to participate. There was a slight slowdown in as a result of those high numbers the first week, but we worked with Perfect Mind quickly to resolve that, and there haven't been any other issues since that time. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from committee? Anything further from staff? It looks like time we can adjourn.
Move adjournment.
No, I have my
camera.
I had my question.
Oh, sorry about that, Linda, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. A couple of weeks ago, we got a letter from the Richmond Tennis Club. So I didn't see a reply, so just wondering, you know, they were talking about, you know, we've completed phase 1, and they're looking at now, you know, us working with them on their next phase of their 3-phase plan. So just wondering what's going on there.
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail. Sorry, yes, I followed up with Gordon, who's the chair of the Richmond Tennis Club, and advised him that I would forward their request as part of our facility sport assessment.
So it's in the hopper.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, all those in favor of adjourning? Contrary? Carry. We go in camera now and move the appropriate motion.
Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Sorry to interrupt. We'll just be one moment while we end the live stream to go in camera.
Exactly.
Thank you.